Great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next session, talking more about God's covenant with Abraham. And here we are in Genesis 17. Now, that, of course, is predicated upon us passing through Genesis 15, where Abraham expresses a little doubt there, and then God tells him to bring forth certain animals, cut them in half, arrange them more or less in a walkway for him and Abraham to go through together. But, of course, Abram undergoes this deep sleep, and he sees God as a smoking firebrand and a pot walk through that to clearly illustrate God, of course, is the one taking the full brunt of the covenant itself, both its blessings and cursings to be executed. So anyway, a new king priest to continue the covenant. We're just building on the lesson from last time with everything that comes below this second white line here. So this vignette's not going to be quite as long as the others were for the sake of the fact we've already done some groundwork here. But we need to make sure we also appreciate the fact that here, both Adam and Noah, in a sense, we're told they are going to not only fill the earth, but they're also going to rule and subdue it. Now, subdue and rule were used exclusively with Adam, but I don't think that we can miss that at all when we see God saying to Noah in two different ways. I have given you everything, and in another verse that I've used in the story with Noah, as we covered that in a previous lesson, is that God says, for everything that flies, creeps, and swims, I have placed it under your authority. So essentially, he is giving him all the authority and dominion that Adam had. Now, notice this when we get into the host context of Genesis 17 and the full breadth of the covenant God is making with Abraham, as he is now changing his name, giving him the sign of this covenant, i.e., circumcision, that he is telling him, I will make kings come from you. So up to this point, we've had no concept that really deals much with the direct idea of kingship. I definitely think there are some strong hints to that when he says, I will make a strong nation come from you, or I will make a nation come from you. And then he says, let me rephrase that. I will make you into a great nation. It's right there at the top of the screen if I would have just looked. And then he tells him he will make him the father of many nations. All that seems to definitely hint strongly at the concept of kingship. But more so, it's on the nose now where he says, I will make kings come from you. And in this ancient world where the concept of progenitor is at play, the idea that, a man rules because either he has conquered and carved out a kingdom for himself where there wasn't one, or he has killed the person who was sitting on the throne before him and is beginning a new dynasty, or progenitor is when, of course, these ancient gods have directly chosen the man that they want to rule and represent them, and all of his sons after him in a steady line to form a strong dynasty are those who have the right to rule just by virtue of the fact they share bloodline. So with that, if he is going to have kings come from him, then that would suggest that the right of kingship begins with him. And even though he never wears a crown, never sits on a throne, never has a palace, only ever lives in tents from the moment he moves into Canaan, yet he is seen as something of a king and even referred to by the Hittites that live around him after his wife has passed, and he seeks to buy a plot of land to bury her as a prince of Yahweh amongst them. So kingship is definitely at play here. And then when God told Noah, I will establish my covenant with you, this is going back to what all of this here means. This is what God is saying now to Abraham. I will set up my covenant between me and you. That is all of this. This is the reason why I bring all of this up, because to hear these words is to make sure we understand this is a direct connection here. So what does this mean then if the covenant that God made with Noah is passing to Abraham? And yet there is not a single word mentioned to Abraham about never flooding the earth again. So while, again, that's part of the covenant promise that God made to Noah, that's not the real core of the covenant that God has made with Noah and is now passing on to Abraham. Because if we understand that there is a covenant here that's linked together by virtue of the shared terminology and phraseology in these verses, we must understand that we cannot ignore all of these things that connect Noah and Abraham together. And yet we see that there's such a large body of shared commonality with Adam as well that links all of this together. Feeling a little bit like John Madden here, trying to break down an NFL play, but you get what I'm saying. So with that, we understand there is a lot here that makes us stop and appreciate the shared community between these stories, and we understand more of the trajectory of why God is doing what he's doing with Abraham, and the carving out of a place for his people and why he wants to use his people. It's to, again, get back to mission one, change the world, fill the earth with all of God's glory. So if we're getting that, then we can appreciate why this story is so important. So hopefully that's helpful. I will see you in the next session.